Walk into many companies today, and you will hear a familiar story. People don't mark time with calendars, they mark it with reorganizations. That was 3 reorgs ago, an engineer might say. I've had 4 different managers in the last 2 years, a marketer might add. Leaders often reach for the reorg as their primary tool for change. Drop in profits, a new competitor, internal friction. Redrawing the organizational chart feels like decisive, visible action. It signals to everyone that something is being done. But this impulse to reshuffle carries a steep, often invisible tax, one that companies pay in morale, productivity, lost knowledge, long after the new charts are laminated and hung on the wall. The most profound damage caused by frequent reorganizations is not to the company's balance sheet, but to its people. Humans are creatures of connection. We thrive on stability and predictability in our social environments. When teams are constantly broken apart and reformed, the invisible threads of trust that bind colleagues together are severed. Trust is not built overnight. It grows from shared experiences, from seeing a teammate come through on a tough deadline, from knowing you can ask a stupid question without judgment. Each reorg resets this process to zero. New teams are collections of strangers who must cautiously learn how to collaborate, making them slower and less willing to take creative risks. This constant disruption also starves the organization of one of its most valuable assets, institutional knowledge. A great deal of what makes a company work isn't written down in a manual. It lives in the informal networks and learned habits of its people. If reorganizations are so often destructive, why do leaders keep turning to them? The answer lies in a confluence of powerful psychological pressures and institutional pressures. First and foremost, leaders are biased toward action. When a company is underperforming, the pressure to do something is immense. A reorg is the most visible dramatic action a leader can take. It creates a sense of momentum and control, even if the underlying problems remain untouched. It's far easier to announce a new structure than it is to begin the slow, difficult work of changing a company's culture or improving its core processes. The reorg becomes a substitute for real problem solving. This bias is amplified by the relatively short tenure of the modern CEO, and a signature reorganization is a tangible way to signal a new era. While many offer valuable insights, the business model of some consulting firms is built around providing blueprints for structural change. The antidote to reactive reorganizing is not to avoid change altogether, but to approach it with the rigor of a physician. The first principle is to diagnose before you prescribe. Instead of immediately assuming the structure is the problem, leaders should invest deeply in understanding the root causes of the organization's struggles. This involves gathering real data, not just anecdotes from the executive suite. It means conducting interviews with people at all levels, running surveys to measure clarity and engagement, and mapping out how work and decisions actually flow through the company, not how they are supposed to flow, according to the official chart. Once a thorough diagnosis is complete, a leader should publicly commit to a period of organizational stability. This simple act can be transformative. Announcing that the core structure will remain in place for a set period, say 18 to 24 months, sends a powerful message. It tells people that the focus will be on improving how we work, not on who reports to whom. This psychological safety gives teams the runway they need to gel, build trust, and develop efficient routines. When structural change is absolutely necessary, the principle should be to move teams intact whenever possible, preserving the valuable social capital they have built. In the end, leaders face a fundamental choice. They can continue to reach for the familiar lever of the reorganization, accepting the cycle of disruption, anxiety, and fleeting gains. They can keep paying the hidden tax of lost productivity and knowledge in exchange for the appearance of decisive action. This is the path of least resistance. It requires little more than a slide deck and a company-wide email. It treats people like pieces on a chessboard to be moved around at will in service of a grand but often flawed strategy. This approach consistently fails to deliver on its promises and leaves a trail of burnt-out, disengaged employees in its wake. Or, leaders can choose the harder, more courageous path. This path begins with the humility to admit that they do not have all the answers, and that the solution is likely not a new set of boxes and lines. It demands a commitment to stability, giving people the security they need to build relationships and master their work. This path focuses on improving the how of work, processes, the skills, and the culture, rather than just the who and the where. It is the path of a gardener, not a mechanic, focused on cultivating the conditions for growth. The call to action is simple. Diagnose first. Invest in understanding the real work and the real problems. Build trust, knowledge, and collaborative spirit. Protect the fragile asset of relationships. Choose the slow, deliberate work of resilience over the quick, theatrical fix and truly thrive.